Good morning, everyone. That's the best we can do? Good morning. All right. First off, I'd like to thank the World Demolition Summit for allowing me this opportunity to share Detroit's journey through our large-scale demo efforts. I also like to thank you all for taking the time to spend your time with me this morning as well and hear it. I am a lifelong Detroiter, born and raised. I love this city. There's nothing you can tell me about it that would make me not feel the way that I do. So just know that this presentation is on a bias end, all right? I want to kind of give you some background about the city as well. Detroit is about 622,000 people. Our residents vary in profession and occupation, even though we are known to be the Motor City. And what we do here with the Construction and Demolition Department, we work as pretty much our own project or program manager for executing this large-scale demo. But I want to take you back. I'm going to take you back to 1950. In the 1950s, Detroit peaked our population at about 1.8 million residents. And this image that you see, this is a neighborhood we call Pole Town. During this time, we were a very, very densely populated community with about 13,000 residents per square mile. I mean, we were packed in there. We also had probably about 520,000 residential dwellings at that time as well. Around the 1960s, however, we started to see a decline in our population. Everything from the civil unrest of the 1967 era to the blighted Devil's Night fires of the 70s and 80s to the housing market crash in the 2000s, we experienced a significant loss of over 65% of our population. And so when people talk about why a large-scale demolition effort, it's because we lost a significant portion of our population, and that left a lot of structures vacant. In 2014, our newly elected mayor at the time, Mayor Mike Duggan, decided that we needed to address what we knew at that time to be about 80,000 blighted structures. And he did so by sourcing $300 million in federal funds to do it. And the team at that time got together and they executed huge quantities of demos. I mean, you can see here in 2014, we demolished over 3,500 structures. In 2015, 4,000 structures. In 2016, 3,200. It just kept going. And as you can see on the map, this is how many properties that we impacted across the entire city. It was a massive undertaking, and people thought, you know, y'all sound a little crazy. You know, you're tearing down all of these structures. And they managed to tear down over 20,000 homes during that time. We were averaging about 3,300 a year. And in some cases, we topped over 200 houses in 1 week. That's crazy. We talked to some of our colleagues across the country, and they demo about 300 houses a year. So to give you a little bit of perspective, 200 in a week is just incredible. But it wasn't without problems. If you heard anything about Detroit demolition during that era, you might have heard reports coming out about FBI probes, accusations of bid rigging, dirty dirt, you name it, it came out. And unfortunately during this time, our residents were bombarded with this information. Some of it true, some of it only partially factual. But what we did learn throughout this period is that demolitions definitely had a positive impact on our community. And that's what was important to us. That's what was important to Mayor Mike Duggan at the time. We saw an increase in property values in areas where we performed demolitions at this rate. So by the end of 2019, Mayor Mike Duggan realized that we were not done. The first wave had addressed a little over 20,000 structures, and we were faced with potentially 16,000 publicly owned blighted structures that the residents were still dealing with. So in 2020, January of 2020, Mayor Duggan appointed me as the director of the demolition program at that time. And we were charged with taking responsibility for the demolition of all of the 16,000, I'm sorry, not 16,000. We had identified probably 8 of the 16,000 that were needed to come down. And so we were charged with implementing the plan to do that, as well as completing the remaining 800 or so demolitions that had to be finished under the federal funding. And we were also responsible for the city's emergency demo plans. And then in March of 2020, COVID hit, right? State shutdowns, safety protocols, everybody's working from home. How do you work from home doing a demo? I don't know, still ain't figured that one out. And at the same time, Mayor Mike Duggan decided, you know what? I think we should do another large-scale demo effort. And we all thought, well, that sounds crazy. How are we gonna do that? We're all gonna shut down the lockdowns. And he said, and not only do we want to do another large-scale effort, we want the residents of Detroit to get behind it and approve a bond initiative to do so. And we thought, he's really lost his mind. So in April 2020, what do? We start efforts to educate our community about what it means to have another large-scale demo effort. We still were not officially a department at this time, though. So in May of 2020, we got the approval from our city council to approve our executive organization plan. And then 2020, July, we were officially a department. We were busy in COVID. No one's at work, but we're busy. And even throughout all of that, we were doing home visits, meeting with community groups in parks so we can maintain social distancing, all kind of virtual meetings to make sure that our residents understood exactly what they were voting for in November. In November of 2020, those residents voted and approved a $250 million proposal to continue a large-scale demo effort. And for the first time, the residents were saying, listen, we want more demos, and we're willing to pay for it to make it happen. What we learned throughout that time is that we had a lot of challenges. Now, we already knew about what had happened before, but as we were engaging with the community, we learned that we had additional challenges with them, as well as with our contracting community as well. The very first thing that we realized was a significant problem for us was going to be our past criticism and mistrust. No one trusted us. Bottom line, the federal government didn't trust us, the residents didn't trust us, the contractors didn't trust us. They were like, yeah, this sounds like y'all just about to start over and be some more chaos like in the past. But we knew that what we had to establish very quickly was that we had to operate from a position of transparency and accountability. And we did that by making sure that all of our information was available to not only our contractors and our residents, but anyone who had interest in the program. We also had the challenge of not being able to be everywhere at every time. When you're talking 8,000 demos, there's going to be somebody on the block who wants their demo to go first, right? We can't be everywhere. So we had to determine what the work prioritization was going to be, and then we had to educate the community about what that looked like. We're going to be here at this time, and then actually execute it. And then time. Of course, we wanted to move as quickly as possible. Our residents have been dealing with the impact of these blighted structures for over 60 years. And so we wanted to address them as quickly as we could to ensure that their quality of life improved as quickly as we could make that happen. And bureaucracy. I started this off saying I work for the city of Detroit, right? So it's government. There's going to be a lot of red tape. And I didn't fix that for myself. I didn't fix it for myself or for my team. But what we did do was we employed a standard of good government that our residents could depend on. It was our job, and continues to be our job as civil servants, to ensure that our residents understand exactly what's going on, that they know exactly what's going on, and how their money, how their tax dollars are being spent. And then at the end, contractor capacity. We learned very quickly that all contractor capacity is not created equal. And we had to learn how to pivot with that. Sometimes that meant canceling contracts. That was the worst case scenario. And I know the contracting community out here don't want to hear that, but sometimes that's what it meant. And sometimes it meant we had to find ways to assist our contractors so that they could be successful. At the end of the day, we wanted to make sure that we were delivering a quality demo product as quickly as we could, but also in providing an opportunity for our contractors to succeed as well. So, before we go too far, I'm sure you're asking, what's Proposal N? Well, Proposal N is a $250 million bond initiative that our voters approved by 72%. It was intended to address 16,000 houses, and it's a mix of demolition and stabilizations. The map shows the demos that we had intended at the beginning of 2021. And this is roughly about 8,000 properties. And we were going to stabilize another 8,000 properties. Our land bank, which is our public arm who manages or inventories all of the publicly owned houses, they did an amazing job during this time of COVID, and they managed to sell over 2,000 properties before we could even get to approval that November. So we started off already only having to stabilize 6,000 properties. And what's a stabilization? Just like it sounds, we intended to stabilize those blighted properties to prevent them from transitioning to the demo list. We didn't want to tear down everything. We wanted to address the blight, but we only wanted to demo that needed to come down. So in a stabilization, we go in, we remove all of the debris from the interior and the exterior of these properties, because this is an urban area and people do what people do. So we had to make sure that we completely cleaned them out. Then we also went in and we installed what we call clearboard. It's a polycarbonate paneling system, and it applies like plywood, but it's just much more aesthetically pleasing than plywood. And what we also realized during this time is that we also had some unwritten charter expectations that had been placed on us by our residents. And it was 100% fine, right? We knew that we needed to improve our residents' quality of life. That was a no-brainer. We also had to increase our contractor inclusion because historically, we had not included all of our contractors in the city of Detroit. We had to continue to provide community transparency into our program. We had to ensure that those demolitions that we were performing were safe, because we're talking about demos in very tight quarters, directly next door to occupied structures. And then we had to build accountability for our team and for our contractors. And we did that by creating our pillars. And okay, I'm just gonna warn you now, for all of the hardcore construction people in the house, this is the people-y part. This is where, you know, we have to engage with our feelings, and I'm sorry. But you saw the stories, right? So we were dealing with a community that did not think that we were capable of executing this. And so we developed our pillars. We were gonna be dependable, data-driven, and deliver. We were gonna be dependable. Health and safety continues to be our top priority, and our goal is to gain the community's trust, and we're gonna do that by being consistent and reliable and holding ourselves and our contractors accountable. We are data-driven. We produce a ton of information with the demos that we perform. And we have provided access to all of our maps, our data, our facts and figures, and we have provided them in a format where they can be accessed 24 hours a day, information in real time. That's available not only to our residents, but anyone who's interested in the program. You can go on right now today, right now at your tables, and see this information available on our website. And then deliver. It did not matter. There were promises that were made under the resolution for Proposal N. So it did not matter if it was jobs for Detroiters or safer neighborhoods. We absolutely had to deliver. There was no ifs, ands, buts about it. If we said we were going to do something, we absolutely had to do it.
Been here 39 years, a long time. I've been here through the good, the bad, and the ugly, and now I am ready to redefine what this is right now. So I'm ready for these two houses to get going. I'm trying to do this for the whole area, not just for me. There are other people on other streets over here that has been here just as long as me. They don't need this, we deserve better, which is why I stood with Proposal N, and now Proposal N is doing its work, and I'm loving it.
The proposal in passed, and we had those funds available. She was one of the first residents that I thought about. I was very touched by her particular case because it was very clear to me that people were living next to these properties every night, and she was one of them, and I had a face to kind of put to that experience. She definitely is the reason why I'm highly so motivated to get these properties down.
Demolition and stabilization efforts are awesome. I mean, they're very much needed. This is what you all voted for, and it's happening.
I got a whole lot I want to do with these lots after these houses are torn down. I am going to get these lots, and I'm going to fence them off. That's where this t-shirt comes from. It's each one, teach one, reach back and get one. That is 3 people moving forward.
So, as you all can see, Ms. Marble is very passionate about the 2 demos that took place. She was exactly who we designed our packages around. She lived directly in between 2 demo candidates. We took them all down the same day. That execution of that particular demo was exactly what Proposal N was designed to do. We had a Detroit-based business, smaller business who had not actively participated in the federal funded work prior to. They performed both demos. Ms. Marble had both of those properties taken down, and we restored a level of quality of life to her that she had not lived with for the past 10 years. So here's our update. This is where we are in our current large-scale demo efforts. We currently have 7,474 houses that have been contracted for demo. Of those, we have 2,384 that are awaiting abatement. We have 609 that are ready to be demolished, and we've already completed 4,481 demos. Now for us, we don't count a demo as being completed until it's graded, because you can't leave an open hole, you can't leave a not graded property, that's not done. So we have 4,301 properties that are completed. Under our stabilization program, we have 2,066 properties that have been contracted out for trash out. 1,758 of those have been completed. We have 3,122 properties that have been clearboarded. Now, what I need you to understand about our clearboard installations is that while our trash outs are contracted, our clearboards are performed in-house. And we take hiring Detroiters very seriously, so my board up team is a committed team of Detroit residents, most of which are returning citizens, which means they have past criminal convictions, and they are committed to providing and giving back to the city, which has given them a second chance. And so they view the work that they do in the community as giving those properties a second chance as well. So a completed stabilization is a trash out and a clear board, and we have 1,758 of those. And so, of course, there were some immediate impacts, some of which we kind of expected and some of which we didn't. Immediately, we thought that we would see some crime reduction, and we did. There was a Wayne State University study that showed a 1% crime reduction for every 3 performed demos. We also had a joint U of M and Harvard study that showed an 11% reduction in homicides and shootings in areas where demolitions are completed. But the one that sits with us is our own data that you can pull off of our website, because it's available, is the 87% reduction in fire-related demos. So if you heard about Detroit in the past, you heard about Devil's Night, and it has allowed the city to transition from what used to be 3 nights of patrols in and around Halloween to now turning Halloween into an event for kids. We no longer have to patrol for fires because Devil's Night is no longer Devil's Night, it's Angel's Night. That's number 1. And 2, we don't have that level of fire anymore, and it's reflected in our demos. The byproduct that we weren't prepared for was the success of the side lots. So once we demolish a property, it leaves what we call a side lot, and the residents love them. The residents use them for increase in their own current properties, so it increases their yards. They turn them into community gardens. It becomes just a community gathering space, whatever the thing that they want. This is an example of one with the she shed, which I absolutely love, and the tent. This is just an area that's attached to their home, and they now have expanded or increased property to their actual home. And then finally, what we also learned is when we coordinated our demo efforts with our stabilization efforts, that we increased the interest in those stabilized properties. And in the first time since this program, the first large-scale demo and this one, the land bank has experienced more property sales than demolitions. And we owe all of this to Mayor Mike Duggan. I've said a couple of times, we thought he was kind of crazy. He was able to prepare a plan that sounded wild. It was far-fetched, and a lot of people thought we're just tearing down the whole city, not really understanding where we came from and what exactly we were experiencing. He thought it was of absolute importance to ensure that the residents of Detroit had a quality of life returned to them, and they did not need to have the stigma of these blighted properties on him. His first thought was always the children and what they would leave them from the city and go away and tell the people that they came encounter with what they thought about their city. And he did not want blighted structures to be that. But you're probably wondering, well, what's next? You see, we put up the numbers. We're getting close to finalizing our large-scale residential efforts. We anticipate being completed with those efforts sometime around the mid-2025. In January of 2023, we were given a huge responsibility with shifting over to commercial demo efforts as well. And we received ARPA funding, which is American Rescue Plan Act funding, to do so. And one of the properties that I'm most excited about is this image that's in the background. If you've ever Googled Detroit blight, this building comes up. It is a beast of a location. We're talking millions of square feet. It is the old Packard plant. And that is what I've set my sights on. Before I retire from the city, that property will be gone, and we're actually starting our efforts this month on working towards taking that property down. But we also have to create a maintenance program for our residentials. What got us to proposal N was the fact that we didn't address them. They would pile up year after year. We had no plan. Moving forward, we do have a plan. So while we don't have an immediate response like in emergencies, we handle emergencies in a 7 to 10 business day kind of deal. With our scheduled demos, we're going to have to come up with a plan so that we don't have a repeat of proposal N. And then because, you know, I like punishment, I asked for more responsibility. And in January of 2023, we were changed from the demo department to the Detroit Construction and Demolition Department. And it placed us in charge of the city's, most of the city's capital improvement plans, as well as the facilities repair and maintenance. All because we wanted to continue to give back to the quality of life of our residents. And you can see what our totals are looking like right now. Our budget responsibilities start with proposal N at $250 million. We have a current operating budget of $25 million. Our commercial demo efforts are budgeted at $100 million. And then our capital improvement programs right now, we are at $150 million. That's a total of $525 million. And I think that that's pretty good for a little girl from the west side of Detroit. So this is exactly what our future looks like. This location here, this is called AB4 Community Center. And we're excited about this project for multiples of reasons. One being, the grand opening is tomorrow. So shameless plug. If you want to, shoot down to Detroit real quick, you can join us at the opening. But two, this is an example of us and our cradle to grave mentality. What used to sit at this site prior to was the Lennox Rec Center. and it was an outdated, underutilized facility that needed to be demolished, and we did that. We took that property down, and then my capital team was responsible for the construction of the new rec center new community center that's at this location. And we're very proud of it. It's exactly what we plan to do moving forward. We don't intend to have that level of blight to sit and go neglected. We also are going to start to maintain our buildings in a proper lifespan type of order, as opposed to just waiting till they fail us. We're going to take them out their miseries ahead of time. And ultimately, I'd like to thank my team. I have an amazing team of civil servants that share my same intensity and loyalty and commitment to the residents of the city of Detroit. Tim Palazzolo is my deputy, and he is the one who allows me to maintain my laser focus on the direction that the department is going. But I also have an incredible team of tradesmen, field liaisons, my board of technicians. We are all so committed to the city of Detroit, and we would love for you to come see us. We would love for you to come see us. So thank you again. It's been my pleasure to serve.
That was a fantastic presentation. So we'll open up the floor to questions. I believe there's a microphone in the back. To start off, I do have a question for you. What do you think was the pivotal moment that you knew that you built the trust back in the community to start your program?
So it's funny, it's kind of twofold. My very first meeting at both the contractor level and at the community level, when I tell you they ripped me a new one, both. My contractors did and the residents did. And I knew that we had started to shift at that first meeting, and it was in someone's yard. She's actually, well, you don't care, but she's in the Finkel area. I go to her home, and she initially comes up to me and she says, "Listen, I'm so glad you're here because no one has been listening to us." I hadn't done anything at that point but show up. But I knew that that was exactly what we needed to do, was just show up. And from that moment forward, every resident that I encountered, they were like, "We get it, we get it. This is different, you all are executing differently." And even our contractors at a certain point was like, "You know what, we concede, you were right, and we're gonna work with you." And so it was knowing that their very step foot into the residents' home to hear their complaints or hear their concerns, they knew that we meant what we said. We were going to do something different.
Appreciate it. Thank you. There's a question right here.
I'm from New Orleans, and we also went through that massive, after Katrina, massive demo that was organized. So federally funded residential demo usually goes as RACO. Did you all have a big movement for Rackham, and were your so the answer is no?
We actually treated the federal funded as well as our current large scale, we treat as all as scheduled demos. So we have a plan in place where we actually survey every property, we identify the accessible, hazardous, and regulated materials that we can abate. We abate what we can, and then we demo. At this point, we do it a little bit differently. We treat everything as hot. We didn't do that in the very beginning. We kind of learned as we went. But under the federal portion, no, we didn't. Our situation, I think, is still a little bit different. We didn't experience any natural disaster to trigger ours. Ours was all kind of self-inflicted. So in that regards, our properties were not necessarily deemed to be inaccessible, and so we had to deal with the actual abatement concern.
So the second question is, if you treated everything hot, were all your contractors asbestos licensed?
Yes. So we have a very firm pre-qualification process, And that requires our contractors to be asbestos certified. They have to also have a wrecking license inside of the city of Detroit. You have to have a builder's license. And Detroit is a little different because we require a whole separate wrecking license attached just to the city. And we also require that you perform demolitions inside of the city. So you can have a wrecking license, never hit anything in the city, and not get work with me, right? Because I have to know that you understand how to do demos the way that Detroit does demos. And if you don't qualify, I'm sorry, you can partner up with a company that has, and then come in and get that experience. We're all in favor of that. But it's so serious for us, and because the media attention and scrutiny is so extreme, we have to ensure that you know what you're doing before you actually swing a bucket in our city. Go ahead.
I love your presentation. Way back for you today. I just wanted to address David Cheney. Is that okay, Agnes? David, where are you? David Cheney, he gave a talk about the Minister of Works, and I went through Toronto because I've had a few days here, and I saw a demolition site, and we have a policy in the UK, we just don't walk past things. So I decided not to get up to my eyes in muck and bullets, but I had a chat with the supervisor who was a member of the local union ironworkers, and he was really proud, and I just wanted to say continue with the training, it's important. And the reason I stopped, by the way, is a 45-ton excavator was doing something that he shouldn't have been doing, really. And I just said to him, I said, perhaps he ought to gas axe that. And he turned around and said, bleep, got on the radio, stopped what he was doing, and did it. And I just want to say, David, continue doing what you're doing, and the rest of you, keep being wonderful and doing a good job. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Once again, a round of, oh, there's one more question? Okay, perfect.
I'm sure this is a presentation all on its own, but how do you handle all the waste on the back end? Like, who's processing all of 200 houses a week?
Yeah, we're challenged with that. It's a lot of waste, and the easy fix is to send it to the landfill. And I know that's a dirty word, but we actually tried to run a pilot program where we were trying to salvage whatever materials we could from the properties to divert as much debris from the landfills as we could. But the challenge that we encountered is because we have such a strict oversight regulation-wise because of the materials that exist in these properties, we destroy a lot of that, just making sure that we remove all of the hazardous and regulated materials. And so we haven't been as successful as we would like to be. I have met someone here last night, actually in the networking event. I am going to have further conversations with that individual because I am interested in seeing what we can do to try and divert as much material to the landfill as we can. And even though we're on the back end of it, I feel like having a plan is better than not having any plan.
All right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause. Thank you.